Good morning, and welcome to another exciting edition of Day 5 Guide Day number 2 here at BTL. And when you know it, we're only 2 in, and we already have an in-studio guest, a not chance circumstance, JP. What do you call it? Like good fortune you happen to be in town. Big JP. JP, your last name is Pelletier?
Pelletier.
Yeah. All the way from New York, actually in town in state in Oklahoma for a business venture, but also a guide on probably the greatest fishery in the country, Thousand Islands, as well as some other ones up in New York. So I said, hey, JP, I got this new show, Day 5 Guide Day, where we talk about guides. You're an hour and a half away. I'm going to come pick you up, bring you down, and we're going to talk about guiding.
Absolutely, and I couldn't wait. I am very happy to have the opportunity, and I appreciate it.
All right. New York, it shocks me as I travel around the country. People say, well, where's your favorite place to fish? Like I said, I just got back from Mexico, so Mexico's it's totally different world. But my answer day in and day out is New York. And everyone looks at me like, you got to be freaking crazy. New York for fishing? And I think there's a lot of people that haven't been to the western half and northern part of New York, and they think of New York like I grew up in Illinois, so they just think Chicago, right?
Right.
Well, I'm like cornfields in central Illinois where I grew up. There's like a completely different world in New York, and that's kind of where you cut your teeth and where you live and guide.
Yeah, so basically, New York State's basically 2 states in one. In the lower half's a massive city, as everybody knows, and the northern half, and especially the western northern half of the state, is phenomenal fishing. It's kind of like a hidden gem, I mean, everybody knows it's good, but it still hasn't been exploited by enough people.
Yeah, so we're talking Oneida, Thousand Islands, Lake Ontario, Champlain, those places.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And you guide on all those places.
I guide on all them places, yeah. So I cut my teeth on Lake Champlain, southern end, thick grass, big largemouth, loved it there. 2002 to like 2009, it was the lake I concentrated on the most. Had a lot of tournament success down on the south end of the lake, and it was great. The lake's changed a lot. There's not as much grass as there used to be. The largemouth just don't seem to be as prevalent as they used to be, but as across the whole state, smallmouth bass have just exploded, and it definitely is a destination spot. Northern Champlain, the St. Lawrence River, Lake Ontario, and even Oneida Lake. Oneida Lake is like a miniature Lake Ontario right now. The fish are just getting absolutely gigantic.
That's all goby related, isn't it?
Yes. So I would say about 7 years ago, Oneida Lake got hit with some type of a disease or a winter kill, and the fish numbers were way down. Years ago, it was nothing to go there and catch 50 to 60 3-pound bass. And if you had 15 to 16.5 pounds, you were going to be really competitive.
Yeah, I remember that for the Elite Series. Like it was the schooling fish were 15, 16 pounds. I remember Creed out there with like a tube, and you think he had like 17 one day, or Chad Griffin had 17, 18 on that top water. And that was like most of those smallmouth bags were like 14 pounds.
Yeah. 17, 18 pounds was huge.
You're doing something.
Now 18 pounds is still real good, right? Depending on what time of the year you go there. I fished an 8-fish tournament there in the fall, not this fall, but the fall before, and we had 34.5 pounds on 8 fish and didn't win.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Because I've been there for the Open the last couple of years, and Oneida is one of the most enjoyable lakes. And then obviously we do Kurt Dove's Pro Bass Camp up there on Oneida, and it's a shockingly enjoyable lake for something that you think of just a solid limit. Like there's a lot of 3 3/4 to 4 1/4 pound smallmouth, and then you're seeing the occasional 5, 5.5 now.
Yeah, and if you go later in the year, in October, early November, like 5s are normal.
Really? So it gets better the later it gets.
Yeah, that lake really seems to be seasonally dependent on how the bite's going to be, right? So ice out through the spawn, immediate post spawn is good. And then you get to like the end of July through August, kind of tough. Still some good fish, but not as many. And like if you went there in the middle of August and the dog days of the summer, you could go out and basically be like, do I know what I'm doing? Yeah. Or have the time of your life, right? And then if you want to go out and just throw an A-rig in the fall, it's you'll be like, where are these fish all the time? It's crazy.
I got you. So I see you got the Smallmouth Crush sweatshirt on.
Oh, yeah.
And obviously everyone knows Travis Manson from Smallmouth Crush. One of my good buddies guides up on Thousand Islands. So you're guiding. Do you guide? How does that work? Do you do independent guiding? Do you guide with him? Is it a team deal? Is it a little bit of both?
Yeah, so I get overflow clients from Travis, and if I have overflow, I gladly let him know that I have him. He's pretty well booked most of the time, right?
Yeah.
I try to reciprocate as much as possible. It's funny, I met Travis in 2009 at it was a FLW BFL Ticonderoga, and it was in the Walmart parking lot, because back then they used to have
you had to register
meeting
in the freaking parking lot of the Walmart, and they had everything set up, and it was like a big deal.
Yeah. So I'm
felt special.
there.
Like everyone at the Walmart, like, what the hell is going on that side? And they'd block off half of the Walmart. They had the stage set up, and you'd register and all that. I remember
it was
that.
Back when they did it right, man. It made you feel like even though you were just like a local angler, it was special when those tournaments.
They took your money with class back then.
Yeah. So like they're doing the pre-tournament meeting, and I'm kind of standing in the back, and I turned around and I saw this guy standing over in the corner, and I'm like, man, he looks familiar. And a good friend of mine, RC Cooper, was friends with Travis, and I'm like, man, I think RC Cooper's friends with that guy. I think that's Travis Manson.
Didn't RC Cooper like rob a plane and then jump out with a parachute back in the day, and they never found him?
I think that he was in the military and jumped out of plenty of planes, but
that was maybe DB Cooper. You know who DB Cooper is, right?
No, I don't.
You've never heard of DB Cooper?
No.
Get out of here.
Never once.
Here, let me Google it real quick. Sorry, I was... what was his name?
RC Cooper. He fished the FLW
RC,
tour.
Okay, DB Cooper is an unidentified man who hijacked Northwestern Orient Air Flight 305 in a Boeing 727. He sat down in a suit with sunglasses. Then he demanded a large ransom sum. They landed. They got back up in the air. And then he had a parachute, and he jumped out of the parachute with all the money, and they never found him. You haven't seen this? You need to Google this.
I'm going to Google that when I get back to the hotel. This is
one of the greatest mystery stories ever. There are still people to this day that are searching for DB Cooper and his money. So anyway, back to RJ Cooper.
So I walk over and I go, hey, man, you look kind of familiar. My name's JP. And he's like, oh, yeah, I'm Travis. I'm like, oh, you are Travis Manson. So just a short conversation in the parking lot. He was like trying to secure points for Angler of the Year. This is back when he was really fishing a lot of tournaments and everything. And he's like, I'm running all the way up to the north end and catching smallmouths and everything. And I'm like, dude, you can stay like right at the ramp and catch 20 pounds. I'll have 20 pounds tomorrow, And he's like, yeah, all right. And it was like the first time I met him. And anyway, at the end of the day, he came in and he had enough to keep the Angler of the Year points. And I had 20 pounds. I think I took second place in that tournament. And it's turned into a pretty good friendship, a close friend of mine since then. And excuse me. Anyway, over the years, he had kept hinting at me, oh, you should go and get your captain's license. You should get your captain's license. I'm moving up there. You really should think about getting the captain's license.
I never thought he'd actually move.
Yeah, right.
And he did.
So I called the bluff, and I'm like, I'm taking this license course this winter. So I got to take a lot of time off from work to do it, because it's an 11-day class if you go and take it straight up. 9 days of testing. 9 days of learning and 2 days of testing, right? And he was like, all right, cool. So I took it and I passed, and then, it's been pretty good. We became even closer friends. I see him pretty much every weekend from the opening to the season until the end. So,
which is weird to me that you guys have seasons when you can target the bass.
Yeah.
What is this? And then aren't there like different counties and stuff like that too? Or
sure. So like Oneida Lake, we can catch bass from ice out until ice, catch and release, right?
Okay.
Champlain, same thing.
Okay.
Jefferson County, Lake Ontario, the eastern basin of Lake Ontario, and the river up past, I want to say it's Ogdensburg. I'm not 100% certain. You can't target the bass. It closes on November 15th, and then it reopens on opening day, June 15th.
So June 15th to November 15th. The season for smallmouth on the St. Lawrence is only 5 months.
Yeah, 5.5 months. Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Which is probably why it's so good.
Yeah. So would you say that the St. Lawrence is probably your primary guiding area? Like
yes, St. Lawrence River, Lake Ontario. That's the preferred spot to guide out of. I like doing Oneida too. Like I said, from as far as like making sure that the client has the best experience possible, I would not go to Oneida Lake on a guide trip in the dog days of summer in August. I don't think that would be a popular pick. The St. Lawrence River, on the other hand, is really good that time of year. This past summer, I had some every time I went out, it just seemed like it was.
Talk numbers, because people won't believe this for smallmouth. Like, I mean, I've seen this in person. I know this is 100% legit. Like, the numbers as far as, a lot of tournament anglers watching this, like your best 5, what an average day is during
25 pounds is the goal for me to get a client when he comes up there. And then I had numerous 27, 28, 29 pound days this summer. The place just keeps getting better and better. And I'll tell you, the first few times I went out there, I fished 3 ABAs, and after the third one, I put it on the trailer and said, I'll never come back here. And excuse me. And
why is that?
Man, I had like 3 weekends that I went up and just couldn't figure out how to fish in the river. It's intimidating when you first go out and you're in that big, heavy current, right? It's massive trying to break down an area. Yeah. Knowing what I know now, it's not nearly as intimidating as it was, but to drive all the way out there and then have 3 weekends where you caught diddly crap, I was like, I ain't never coming back.
And now you got out there.
Now it's like I want to move out there.
Yeah. Okay, so for the average guy who's never been to the St. Lawrence River, to Lake Ontario, to that whole kind of part of the country, they've probably seen it on the Elite Series or on the BPT. Just describe what that fishery is, kind of from Ontario moving into the river. And I'm going to pull it up on Google Earth over here too.
So, the eastern basin of Lake Ontario, you have a lot of shallow rock, sand flats. You go into some of the bays, there's weeds. The smallmouth will get in them weeds. You want to venture further out, you got the islands, right? And the 100% goby oriented fish out deep, 35, 40 feet deep. You can fish on the United States side, and you can fish on the Canadian side. The one good thing is you can start guiding earlier with that early Canadian season, which is early April until May 10th. Pre-spawn, the shallow bite's really good. There's always fish deep and shallow, but there's a lot of shallow fish. Post-spawn is really fun. Throwing, horizontal presentations, shallow, tons of fish. You see wolf packs of fish where you're just like,
we're not talking like forward-facing sonar. We're talking visually seeing
I'm talking
these
sight
5
fishing.
to 7 pound smallmouth.
Yeah.
Swimming around like in a swimming pool.
Yes, it's crystal clear water. You can see straight to the bottom in 12 feet of water. Good. I mean, you can see the bottom deeper than that, but picking fish out 10 feet, 12 feet or less, it's just phenomenal, man. You make that long cast and you're reeling it in, and then all of a sudden there's a black cloud behind it, right? And there's 30 of them. And then at that time of the year, sometimes you can catch 20 of the 30, right?
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. I thought it was kind of like 1 or 2 out of the wolf pack and they're done. But that maybe just because I've been there, and I haven't ever been there when the shallow bite's like really popping off.
Right. So one of the things, and we were talking about this earlier, one of the things I learned over the past few years is that patience is a virtue for myself anyway. If I get into an area, shallow, deep, doesn't matter, and I know that the potential's there and we're getting bit, right? I'm not in a real big rush to go and try to find another area. The areas have fish, right? You might have to back off, fish in the general area for a while, come back, right? But they're there and they will bite, and the clients definitely leave happy.
So if I want to go, I could almost equate it based on what I've seen. And like I said, I have limited shallow experience there. I probably spent 5 days shallow my whole life on Lake Ontario and Thousand Islands. But it's almost like bone fishing in a way. Like as far as like you see the fish, like the bonefish in the salt water, like it's crystal clear. You see them, you lead it. When you hook the thing, it's just chaos afterwards. But like, when is the prime time to target like the shallow? Like if I wanted to spend 3 days or 2 days and I'm like, I want to see everything, either a little swim bait or an underspin or a fly, a hair jig, little black. When we say hair jig, explain what the hair is up there.
It'd be a marabou jig.
It's like a little 1/8 ounce black marabou jig. It does nothing, and the smallmouth eat it like it's
Yeah, for some reason they just love that thing,
Yeah,
right?
it's
Looks
nuts.
like a little gnat or something.
When is the prime time if I want? And I understand it's all weather dependent.
Yeah,
'cause
weather
we'll get into
dependent.
that.
I would say for myself personally, I would think the 2nd and 3rd week in July.
Okay.
Post spawn, they're still shallow, they're cruising, they're schooling, and they're chilling.
Okay. So that's for if I just want to go out and say, JP, I don't care about the 30 to 40 foot deep fish. I want to see these suckers eat it, and I want to fight them in 10 foot or less.
Yeah, and basically, you could just launch and put your trolling motor down and just keep the trolling motor on high, and you're going to run into a school of fish, eventually just running down any shoreline. I mean,
so as a guide, then you kind of have, do you talk to your clients? Like, do you have guys who get in the boat who say, I want to chase some shallow today?
yeah, so that's funny. So last year we had these guys fly in from Texas. It was a father and son, and they went with me, and they wanted to fish deep, right? They're like, oh,
They wanted to fish deep.
We want to fish deep. We want to go deep, right? So I'm like, all right, we'll go deep. So we went out, and it was like calm, right? So I launched out of Cape Vincent, and I went out mouth of the lake, and I got about 6 miles out, and all of a sudden I'm like, man, it ain't calm anymore. It's getting rough, right? And I get out to the spot, and I'm like, dang, dude, we're on like 4 footers, and they're catching fish, right? They were getting some quality bites, and then as the day was going on, the wind started to lay down, and I'm like, guys, if you want to get that big fish, that 6+, we got to go shallow. I got a spot, right? I'll bring you in there, get you a 6-pounder. I can't guarantee it, but
smallmouth. Let's just clarify. 6 pound smallmouth bass.
Yeah, 6-pound smallmouth bass.
Okay,
yeah.
Which is everybody who's listening to this, probably 99.9% of people's personal best.
Would be their personal best,
Yes.
most likely. Yeah. So no, we want to fish deep. We want to fish deep. So I kind of was like, all right, well, I got a spot deep on the way in. Let's go. So we went in, right, and I stopped on a rock I had out deep, and there was nothing there. And I'm like, all right, come on, we only got an hour left. Let's go. And I got into these little seams that I got up shallow, and I'm like, don't even cast. We're just gonna make a pass through and look. So we made a pass through, backed off, and I'm looking. I go, all right, I see her, bud. Let me just circle the boat back around. And I circled the boat back around. And I'm like, see that little corner right there? She's sitting right in there, right? And then I see the kid pitch it over, and I see the line start swimming out. And I'm like, she's got it, bud. Set the hook. And he sets the hook, and it was a 6-7.
Oh, my God. Which takes, on that stuff, 3 to 5 minutes to land.
Yeah. The thing's rip and drag, going crazy, jumping all over the place, right? And we get the fish in, and we take a bunch of pictures, and we weigh it and everything. The kid's ecstatic, right? And I go, dang, probably wish we came in here a little earlier, huh?
Yeah. Explain the river then. I know that it is a completely different animal. When people hear of Thousand Islands, a lot of them don't associate it with the Lake Ontario thing. Obviously, there are times when Lake Ontario is a no-go just for safety, and then you're kind of stuck in I wouldn't say stuck, but then you're fishing in the river. But kind of talk about how the river breaks down, because like if you look at it, if I pull it up on Google Earth here and you look at it, this is an intimidating body of water if you don't know how to get around. Like, it is probably in the world one of the top 5 toughest freshwater places to just dump your boat in and figure out where the hell you want to go.
Right. So I actually live right close to Albany, New York, and I'm 5 minutes from the Hudson River, and everybody says, oh, the mighty Hudson. And then you go up to the St. Lawrence River, and you're like, the Hudson River looks like a creek, right? The river is miles wide in some areas, broken up by all these islands and shoals, and some of them ain't marked, right? It's pretty dangerous if you don't know your way around. There's actually one spot over near Cape Vincent where there's actually lower units laying on the top of the shoal where the guys were driving across, and the lower units are just sitting there, And the best advice I can give for learning the river is you just have to keep drifting until you find areas that there's fish in, right? Because there's a lot of areas that look like they're going to have a lot of potential, and you'll just be drifting forever and forever. And just as you think you want to quit, bang, you get one. And then another 40 yards, bang, you got another one. And then, you start making your wave points on it, and you start realizing, man, there's a lot more fish down there than I thought there was. And then you find the sweet spot. And then when you start looking at the shoreline and how that area is setting up, then the light starts going off, right? Oh, I know an area that kind of sets up like this, right? And you'll go to that other area, and then, oh, there it is. And that's what took me a couple years to figure out. I'm going in there and trying to fish bays off of the river because I was very intimidated by the current, which I think most people that have never been there would be. I mean, some of some of the structure sticking out, and then you're trying to go on the seam close to it, and you're fishing backwards, right? You're the nose of your boat's facing the wrong way.
Backwards at 2 miles an hour this whole time.
Yeah, and then you're paranoid because you're looking behind you, and your boat's swinging in towards this big structure sitting out of the water, and it's easy to be like, I ain't never gonna learn this. I got to get out of here. At least it was for me. I didn't put the time in, but time on the water and being very observant to the bottoms. Mega 360 is huge on the river. You know, live scope's good in the river too, but Mega 360. I actually told Travis I was thinking about taking my Mega 360 off because I never turned it on. And I was like, I'm just getting it off. It's taking it. And he's like, you can't be up here without Mega 360 on. So I started turning it on, and I'm like, oh man, now I understand why these fish are setting up in this spot, right? So
I got into the last time I was there, and I'll throw it up right here. That Canadian Narrows on that far side, kind of underneath that bridge. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like chaos and then it's like that crystal blue water. I tried to describe it to someone as like, have you ever seen the movie like The Chronicles of Narnia?
Yeah.
Like it feels like you're in Narnia when you go under that bridge and you're around all those islands. But explain the drifting thing too, because I think most people also think, like I would think, well, if I'm going to pay for a guide trip, I don't just want to drift, but it's like active drifting is the way I would describe it. It's not like catfish drifting.
Yeah, right. So basically, you know, I get into an area that I want to be at. Basically, I'll run up to the area, turn the boat nose towards the lake, and then I'll tell them, listen, cast out and just keep your bail open for a while. I'll let you know when to close it or whatever. And a lot of guys do say that when we first go out, oh, what we're going to do is drift. And I'm like, man, just give me an hour, right?
Yeah.
If you don't like it after the hour, we'll go do something else or whatever. And then I'll be like, all right, close your bails, you know? And I'm like, as soon as that rod starts bouncing.
And it's a
that steady boom, boom,
which is
boom.
Your jig, your Ned, your drop shot weight, whatever it is, just ticking off of that bottom as you move backwards in what 20 to 50 foot of water.
Yeah, 30 to 60 feet. Yeah, really. And
which sounds wild. It sounds wild. It really is until you do it and you're like, okay, this is manageable. But like just the concept of it for so many bass fishermen is bizarre. Yeah, I don't think you understand that because you're from New York. Guy from Illinois who grew up in Oklahoma. If you're from Alabama, anywhere, it's like, okay,
right,
2 mile an hour current, 50 foot deep, 8-pound test.
It's definitely intimidating, even like for myself, because I grew up on Lake Champlain fishing, you know, the south end, the north end, Oneida Lake. I was used to fishing. Oneida's not that deep, but northern Champlain, we fished deep, drop shotting for the bass and stuff. But that current just adds a whole new dynamic to it all. And so you'll be feeling it, right? Boom, 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 and then all of a sudden, just boom. And a lot of the guys, you know, they fly in and they ain't used to fishing that far behind the boat, and they don't really feel like and I'm like, hey, you got one, bud, set the hook. Oh, I do. And they set the hook. Oh yeah, I got one. And then it's funny too, because even some of the smaller fish, because you catch small ones too, you know, dang, this thing's pulling hard, right? And I'm like, yeah, it is. But you could tell, you know, by the head shakes, I can tell, you know, right away. And I'm like, oh, that one's going to be small, man. It's not shaking.
What's the difference in that head shakes?
Man, the whole rod will just be bouncing as that big fish is shaking its head back and forth. And when you get them smaller ones, all they kind of do is just keep trying to swim away, right? So it feels like it's heavy, right? And when you're reeling it in, if you know, right, you'll be like, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a small one. And or you'll see that rod bounce and be like, all right, buddy, you got a good one on there, hold on to it. And comes up and it's 5.5 to 6 pounds, and they're like, okay, I like this drifting thing. And the doubles, I mean, I don't know how many doubles we had this year. I got the 2 guys in there, and both of them are hooked up, and both the fish are 4.5 to 5.5 pounds, and they're just tickled to death, you know?
Yeah. Primarily then, you don't go out of just one ramp. Like it's kind of an area that you launch out of, and that's kind of based on where the bite is and wind dependent, right? Mainly kind of wind dependent and where you can and go. But I mean, you're out of anywhere from what, like Clayton, Cape Vincent,
Mud Bay on the lake.
Yeah, Mud Bay. I mean, Chameau.
Yep, Isthma, Chameau.
Last time I was up there, I thought it was interesting. You were actually, I don't think you had any guide clients, and you were going to check an area like on your own volition at 9 o'clock at night, basically for the guide clients that were coming in the next couple of days.
Actually, that was I had clients.
Oh, you did?
And they had the next day, and you guys were fishing the open, and we can't talk about that area, but Travis was like, hey, I got this other area. See if those kids want to go fishing this afternoon. That way we ain't got to mess with these guys with the opens and see if there's some big ones over on this side. And it was a pretty far drive. And I went over there and we caught a ton of fish, but none of them were over 3 pounds. So I was like, nah, we ain't going to mess with it tomorrow.
So how many fish are we talking about a day? It's obviously a trophy fishery. It has some of the biggest smallmouth bass in the country there. Is it a deal where, hey, you're like, what are we talking numbers wise? Would you say an average day with decent weather on the lake and then the river?
15 to 20 quality fish is what
per boat or per person?
If there's 2 guys in the boat, 20 to 25.
Wow. Okay.
One guy, I'm happy if I can get him 15 to 20, and they're quality fish, right? I mean, we're fishing really good areas. We're targeting big fish. You could go to other areas, and I could have the guy catch 60 fish in an hour.
So if there's a guy who goes, listen, I just want my rod bent. I don't care if they're 2-pounders or 6-pounders. I just want to catch as many as possible. That changes things completely.
Yeah, just go over to the nursery, right? I mean, there's a couple of structures where they're just always on there. And
so if you want to go just catch, or you have young kids with you who you're like, maybe you want to catch a trophy, but you want to make sure the kids catch a bunch. You can go spend a couple hours at what you call the nursery. Then you can go out and drag or go shallow to try to get that trophy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I brought my father and my son up on us on, it was actually the day that, the last day of the open.
Mm-hmm.
And, my son, God bless him, he had a great day. He caught 27 pounds by himself on 5 fish. In a very short amount of time. But you got to remember, he's only 9, right?
Yeah.
So 20 minutes between bites, the interest is going away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, or if he loses one, he got upset. And I'm like, why are you getting upset? You just caught a 585 10 minutes ago. You don't need to be upset. There's plenty of fish down there. So with the kids, yeah, I mean, unless the father's like, I want this kid to catch the biggest smallmouth, possible,
yeah,
I would probably lean more towards going towards the lake.
Getting more bites
to some of them nursery holes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I know there's some magic days out there. What's like the craziest, best case scenario guiding day that you've had where you just get off the water and you're like, those people have no idea how epic this was.
I had a guy come in and originally it was supposed to be this gentleman and his daughter, and Travis was going to take the guy and I was going to take his daughter.
Okay.
And his daughter backed out because she was kind of scared of the wind or whatever.
Okay.
So this guy's buddy came last minute, right? And he comes up and I'm like, all right, we're going out on the lake the first day. It's going to be flat, calm. We're going, right? So we go out there and we're fishing around and he's catching 4s and 4s and 4.5s. And then all of a sudden he catches a 7-4.
A set like 1, 2, 3,
7-4.
4, 5, 6, 7, and then 4 ounce, and it's a smallmouth.
7-pound, 4 ounce. So I go, there's one right there, man. Flip over there. So he flips over and I go, that fish swam down on it. And he's like, oh, I got him. And then it ripped drag for what seemed like 15 seconds straight. And I'm like, kind of acting drummy, and he started reeling it and he's like, man, it won't come up. Right. And he's not really gaining. And then it ripped drag again for like another 15, 20 seconds. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's definitely a drum. So then he grabs the line and squeezes the rod and pulls. And I'm like, no, don't do that just in case it isn't, And, like 2 minutes later, finally the fish starts coming up off the bottom. Excuse me. And I see the color and I go, oh man, dude, you got the biggest smallmouth of your life right there. And this fish comes up. And it was so tired, it just kind of floated up like a blimp. And I netted it and I threw it in the boat. And I go, man, that's a legit 7. And we weighed it and it was 7 pounds, 4 ounces, right? So, and the guy, he's like, I can't believe it. And he's holding the fish. And I'm like, look at that lump, right? And I'll have to put the picture on my website, but it had a big hammer hump.
Really?
Right behind its eye on the top of its head, And I had him for 2 days. So the next day I was like, all right, let's go in the river. And he caught 11 fish over 5 pounds the second day. And he goes, JP, this is just the best 2 days of fishing in my life.
So that's a 5-pounder more than every hour.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a 5-pounder every half hour to 45 minutes.
Yeah, this guy was having
and it takes
best.
5 to 10 minutes to catch, land, photograph and get back up where you're drifting.
Yeah, and we learned a lot that day too, because as I was in this area that we were catching these fish, I'm like, man, I gotta like expand on this, because this guy's already having a really good day, right? So now I can mess around a little bit, right? Because that's the beauty of guiding too, right? If the guy catches 5-pounders, I can go look for something new because he's already tickled pink. And if we hit a spot and we don't hit anything, we'll come back. So I'm like, man, I'm going to tell you what, we're just going to keep on drifting. And he's going through this area, right? And I could see his rod bouncing and bouncing and bouncing. And then all of a sudden he's like, my rod's not bouncing anymore. And I'm like, all right, just let it keep going. And I'm looking and I don't see nothing on the screen, you know, rock wise or nothing on 360. And then all of a sudden, bang, he's got a bite, right? And 5 1/4. And I'm like, oh, there's just a roamer out here just swimming around. So I'm like, I wonder how many of them there are. And we just started expanding on that. And the area went from what I thought was maybe like a 1/8 of a mile stretch into a mile stretch, where I was like, man, I can drift this whole thing with people and feel real confident that at any point they're going to get bit. Then I started messing with the depths. All right, we were catching him at 36, but if I move the boat out, I'm going to be in 54. We move out, bang, he gets one, right? I'm like, oh man, this area has a lot more potential. It was just loaded. It was
11 over 5 in one day.
Yeah, that guy calls me and texts me all the time. We became pretty good friends.
I call and text you all the time too. As far as time on the water, I know people vacation up there. Is it a full day deal? Can you do a half day trip? What do you recommend, like duration wise? I had last week, Justin was like, hey, you know, this clown knife fish and this cichlids, it's cool. Like, come for a day, maybe 2 days, but you don't want to do like 3 days or a week. Like, it's a bucket list trip. Is this something that you'd recommend? A 1 day deal? Can you do a half day? Is it something that you could do a 3 day, 4 night trip and do something different every day? Just talk about kind of duration for people who are looking to come up.
Yeah, I really think it depends on what type of a fisherman you are, right? So like if you're hardcore and you want to see what the whole system has to offer and you want to plan, man, I want to go out on the lake and I want to catch some sallow fish. I want to catch some deep fish, but I also want to get in the river and I want to see what this current is, right?
Yeah.
I would say 2 days, right?
Yeah.
Maybe 3, because one day you're always going to probably get blown to the point where it's just not fun on the lake. You still catch them.
You can still, but that's when you guys, that's key, because I've got buddies who are like, well, I'm not going to go up there because there's a 50-50 chance we're not going to be able to get out there. And I'm like, well, Thousand Islands is a little different because you might not be able to go out to the Galoos, or you might not be able to go way the hell out in the lake, but you can stay in a bay. There's going to be protected. If you're with some guy who takes out a more than one ramp, you might be able to put it in the you obviously can put it in the river and fish different stuff. I mean, unless it's just gale force, you can always get on the water somewhere on the St. Lawrence.
Yeah, it seems like you could always get on the river. There's always a ramp further up that's protected,
which is key if you're there from 1,000 miles away and you're there to catch smallmouth. Like the problem with Erie, in my opinion, sometimes, like if you're doing the walleye fishing thing at Erie, you just wake up in the morning and know, now we're not going.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. We definitely have some protection up there. And if you were flying in, I would definitely recommend that you do 2 days so that you definitely, you just spend all that money just to get there. If you're flying
in, do 3.
Yeah.
And then you'll pretty much have at least one epic day out of those 3.
Yeah. And I had quite a few times where I'd do a Saturday, 6 to 2 is a normal trip. Right.
Okay.
And then I'd do a 4 to 7 or 4 to 7:30 because it doesn't get dark until 9. Right. And then
so you could do a daylight to dark with the same people though.
Oh, I can do that. Done that. Yeah. Guy came from Maryland and he's like, hey, I want to extend the day. I'm like, we'll stay out as long as you want.
Yeah.
You know? So yeah. A half a day, is like 450. And then like a full day is 700.
We'll do that now then. You do have a website. It is bigjpbass.com.
Yeah.
Let me throw this up here. There it is right there. It's got the rates and I
think I got to adjust the rates for this year, but
okay. It's got all sorts of stuff on there. And like you said, Smallmouth Crush affiliate. But we haven't even really gotten into the other fisheries. Like how often do you get up to Champlain? Because that's a fishery that I think would be very beneficial to have a guide on, considering
Yeah,
how big
right.
it is.
So realistically, as soon as the ice is off, the largemouth bite is predominantly good. Chatterbaits, spinnerbaits, fishing shallow, power fishing, catching, quality fish. I mean, back in years ago, I would be confident I could take a guy out and get him 22 pounds on 5 fish down there. But it just seems like the last few years that the quality, that you'll catch plenty quantity, right? It's just the quality doesn't seem to be there like it used to be. The north end is going to be extremely cold still in April. It'll be thawed out, but it's going to be, they'll be done spawning on the south end and 100% post spawn, and the fish on the north end are just pulling up on beds.
Yeah, it's a big ass lake when they're doing that.
Yeah,
it's either power plant lake or giant lake. Those are the only two places that happens.
So what I would like to, what I like to do is I like to do the real early April, May, largemouth, south end of Champlain and Ticonderoga, and then shift my gears to Oneida to catch the spawn, right? Because St. Lawrence isn't open yet, but you can catch 20 pounds easily on Oneida, pre-spawn, spawn, immediate post-spawn.
And it doesn't get much bass pressure that time of the year unless there's a tournament.
Yeah,
but
I think
during the week, it's like
Cash and Rods does a paper tournament.
But other than that, I mean, I've been there during the week, and there's like 2 boats in the parking lot. And you're like, oh, maybe they're not biting. I've just been driving through up to St. and you go out there and it's just, and you're like, what the hell is everybody? It's like right there from Syracuse.
Yeah. It's so close and nobody really fishes.
How far is it from Syracuse? Like if you're doing business in New York, Syracuse, you got family there, you want to jump out for a day on Oneida, it's what, 30
minutes
30
from Syracuse.
Minutes. It's
just
that's
right up
a
81.
perfect day guide trip.
Yeah. And it's a lot of fun, that time of year.
Yeah.
That time of year you're going to have your rod bent a lot.
And it's not always going to be bass.
No, you catch walleyes,
drum,
a lot of drum.
walleyes.
You can catch some hammer drum. Them things are getting big
massive,
too.
Flat channel cats.
Yep.
You'll hook at least, like if you're there during the channel cat spawn, you'll hook at least 2 of those suckers a day on a drop.
And then
shot.
I seen gizzard. I don't know if they were gizzards, but I seen giant shad in there this spring. Oh, huge ones. They were swimming around right where the bass were spawning. I'm like, man, look at the size of those shad. And they were swimming around like
yellow
crazy.
perch, pike.
Yep, pickerel. Largemouth.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a dynamic lake.
That's a fun one.
Sure.
Which one, like personally, if you had one day left to fish in New York and you had to pick the perfect fishery and the perfect day, what time of the year and what fishery are you spending your last day on?
Oh, it would be the second week of July, and it would be Lake Ontario.
Okay.
Regardless of the weather.
Are you booked for that week already?
I have openings in July.
Okay.
Dates are filling in pretty quick here, but I have some openings in July still available. The early season up there in Canada, you got to pay for the Canadian license or whatever, but that is huge numbers and big bass. That's the middle of April until May 10th. The fishing's phenomenal up there that time of year too. Okay. It's going to be cold and going to be windy and a little bit uncomfortable, but
you're a working guy, like you have a job, so this is mainly what 2-3 days a week that you can have this weekends.
I do the weekends and then I use all my vacation time.
Okay.
So if a guy calls me up and he goes, hey man, I really want to do these 2 days, and it's a Tuesday, Wednesday, or it's a Friday, he wants to come Friday, Saturday, I'll take the day off from work and go up there.
And listen, if you're booked or you're working, Travis is a good call too.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
exactly. I owe a lot of my success to Travis in the whole aspect of teaching me the system.
Yep.
Pushing me to get my guiding license. And then the whole week of the guiding class, I'm calling him going, dude, I don't really think I'm going to pass this. And I got a lot of money wrapped up.
Show about
dude, it was the
it's tough. I know a bunch of guys
that in my
they're
life.
Like, dude, this has nothing to do with what I am ever going to do, but you have to know all this stuff.
Yeah, and I think Justin was on. Was it Justin?
Hamner? Yeah.
No, Jones.
Justin Jones. He was talking
about how the chart plotting, I thought he said, was kind of hard for him.
Yeah.
I'm a pipe fitter, so math and trigonometry and all that stuff is second nature. So the teacher actually had me helping the people in the class that were struggling with that aspect, because I was real good with the chart plotting, right? Till the night before, because then you're getting all rattled because it's test time, right? But the rules of the road and them other written tests, they're brutal.
Oh, it says you also guide. I've never even heard of these places.
Saratoga Lake.
Yeah, never heard of that.
So Saratoga Lake is a lake that's closer to my house. That'd be one that I would say, 4-hour trip. Your rod's bent the whole time. The jerkbait fishing at ice out is absolutely phenomenal. largemouth
Large
and smallmouth. We can catch smallmouth there too, but they ain't going to be the 2.5 pounder.
Yeah.
The largemouth, you can get them up to 4 or 5 pounds in there. And then what else is on there?
The Great
Sacandaga.
Skandanaga Lake.
Great Sacandaga.
Great. Wait,
So-
that's really the name of it?
Sacandaga Lake, I kind of put that on there for the guys that are more local, that maybe they don't own a boat, but they want to go fishing,
Yeah.
right? Because you're not going to catch trophy smallmouth bass out of Sacandaga Lake, but we'll catch 70.
Oh, cool.
So your rod is just bent.
Where's
the
that
whole
located
day.
in New York?
It's just above Amsterdam.
Okay.
Broad Albin, New York. Is where
Okay.
it's at.
And then the other one you got on there, that's a cool name, the Mohawk River.
Oh, the Mohawk River, the mighty Mohawk. So that's the sister to the Hudson River. The Mohawk River has actually got gobies in it now. The smallmouth are getting real big. It's taken up to 22 pounds to win a 5-fish tournament there in the fall now.
Oh, that's strong.
And it's diverse because you can go down the river further and it's all chestnut,
Mhm.
and you can punch for largemouth and frog for largemouth and stuff like that.
Can you bring your own stuff? Do you provide stuff? Like, what are we fishing with?
Sure.
What are
So
we fishing out of?
I provide everything but food, just in case somebody's got a food allergy, but rods, baits.
You don't want to give someone a
Drinks.
granola bar who's allergic to peanuts out in the middle of Lake
Yeah,
Ontario.
right. That's exactly what I was thinking.
You'll be fizzing fish 1 second, then fizzing an EpiPen into someone the next.
Man, I got to tell you, I kind of learned that from Travis too, because we'll fish a team tournament. I'll be
Yeah.
like, "Do you bring any food?" He's like, "For myself." And at first, I didn't get it, And then I'm like, I wonder if he does that solely because he's,
Probably just
you
out
give
of
somebody some
creature
food
of
and that they
habit.
can't have, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you
you're
get yourself,
screwed.
you're out in the Great Lakes and somebody starts getting sick, you're in for a bad day. So, but I provide all the tackle, rods, reels,
What do we use?
Douglas rods, all Douglas rods. I use the LRS series for bait casters and the Matrix series for the spinning.
Okay, so if you're a high-end guy and you're used to throwing Loomis, Daiwa, Shimano, and you're like, man, I don't want to fly up and smallmouth fish, like, you're using top-notch stuff.
Yeah, they're top-notch rods
Yeah.
and reels. Yeah, all Shimano Verados.
Yeah.
Or Vanfords.
Yeah.
Vanford reels, 3000
Yeah, I mean, you're
series.
using a $700-800 setup.
Yeah. It's like that. I don't know if you saw
Yeah.
the one video we did, but he had a fish and I had a fish, and then the fish got caught on another rod. And then he's like, just drop the rod. And I'm like, I ain't
No,
losing
I'm not dropping my
$900
rod.
for a fish,
Yeah. Yeah.
Cortland braid, I'm a big fan of throwing
Mhm.
Cortland braid. And I use Seaguar in VizX fluorocarbon as my leader
It's
material.
good stuff. And primarily spinning rods.
Primarily spinning rods, yes.
So is that weird if you're a dude from down south, Louisiana, Texas, you're a bait cast thoroughbred?
Oh, yeah. You get a lot of guys that are like, can you switch this handle over to the right side? I'm like, yep, no problem. So I learned real quick the night before when I tell them what ramp we're going to go to. Now I ask, what side do you, because that takes time away from them.
Yeah.
The day of the
switch
trip
it.
for me to have
But-
to switch it.
I mean, it's a great way to learn how to use a spinning rod in a day and age. If you're a tournament fisherman, spinning rods are becoming more and more prevalent.
Yes. And a lot of the trips were guys bringing their kids that were in high school, and they were graduating this year, and they were going to the college level, and they were going to school to
Uh-huh.
fish. So I'm assuming they were coming up to learn, so
Yeah.
that like if they end up here, they got an idea of what's going on.
And then what's the latest that you get out? Like, does Canada close too on that date?
Yeah, the
fall?
bass fishing's done on November 15th, but then weather permitting, Oneida is on fire at November 15th.
A-rig, jerk
A-rig,
bait, swim
crazy,
bait,
yeah.
jig.
Yep, swim bait, A-rig.
You mentioned the weather. I think that's probably the biggest thing that keeps guys from going out. Talk about how sketchy it does get on the lake. If you're not a fan of big open water, if you don't, just kind of talk about that whole safety system and what you can expect if you're going out on the lake. Because
Okay,
I think
so-
that holds some people back.
Yeah, so some people are like,
Me
dead-
included when I first went out there. Like, I mean, I had to force myself to go out with a buddy and be like, all right, we're going to Galoo and it's a little rough today. Let's grow a pair and learn how to do this
Right.
safely.
So the night before, if I'm looking at the weather and it says 15 to 20 anywhere out of the west,
No lake.
I'm probably going to recommend that we ain't going on the lake because it's just not going to be enjoyable. You can do it.
Yeah.
You're going to destroy my equipment, right? And and depending on if you've ever even been in water like that, it might just ruin your whole day. I mean, you might end up getting sick.
Yep.
People get really nervous too. Water's coming. You're
Have you
fishing
had
and the
people
water's
freak out
coming in
before?
the boat. What's that?
Have you had people freak out before? Like,
Well, no.
getting
Luckily now, like the only person I've had freak out is Gino. We were fishing the
That's like your
Smallmouth
buddy,
Crush
isn't
Open.
it?
Yeah, he's my best friend.
Yeah.
We were fishing the Smallmouth Crush Open, and we were over on the New York eastern end of the lake. And I'm like, man, we got to get over to Canada and try to fill this limit out. And it was blowing. And we were in the troughs, and the waves were dumping into the boat. And he's like, I'm pretty sure that we're gonna sink. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure we're going to be fine. And I think we aborted and went back,
Yeah.
I would.
But you're not putting guide clients in
I would
that
never
type
do
of
that with a
thing.
guide client.
Yeah.
No, we would stay
That's
in the
a
river.
personal tournament fishing deal.
Yeah. It's not enjoyable at all
Yeah.
for the client whatsoever. You have so many other options in the river to still have a really successful, enjoyable day.
Cool. Do you do any other species other than bass?
No, well, on Oneida in the fall, I will do walleye trips. Even for keeps, because there's so many of them in there. If a guy's like, man, I want to go out there, I want to get my limit of walleyes,
I don't
problem.
think I've ever spent a day on Oneida where I didn't catch 5. It was 3 the first time I was there, and then this last time they upped it to 5. I don't think there's ever been a day I've gone out because I live on Shackleton. It's the only place I know how to fish. You see me out there at the kids' camp. I go, where we go? We drive right out to Shackleton. It's like 2 miles long. There's about 1 billion humps out there. I just drift till my little heart's content.
Oh
with
yeah,
the drop
it's loaded,
shot
loaded
and
with walleyes. There's 1 million walleyes in there.
But I don't
according
think
to
there's
DC.
ever been a day that I've gone out there where I haven't caught at least a limit of walleye.
Right.
Be it at 3 the first time or 5 the second time. And they're all like perfect eater size, 16, 17 inches.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about that lake is that, I mean, if you want a trophy walleye, go to Lake Erie or up to call Travis and go to the St. Lawrence River. I mean,
Because he does walleye stuff.
Yeah, and he'll put you on some big walleyes. He's really good at it. Oneida Lake.
I'll get Travis on the show eventually too.
Yeah,
here.
for sure.
I just he's like so well known. I want to get some different diversity in there before we have
some silent creepers, right?
Day 5 conspiracy theory.
But the Oneida Lake walleyes, they run that 15 to 19 inches,
and they just up the limit.
Yeah, to 5, which a lot of the walleye guys weren't really thrilled with, but there's so many of them.
Yeah, they overstocked us.
I don't think
I really think they overstocked them in there. I mean, they're a nuisance, which is hard to believe you're saying that about walleye. But anything else you want to get in here? Anything else you think I'm kind of leaving out? Like the whole goal of the show is to give people a feel for the fishery, if they've been thinking about going up there, to get to know you as a guide, to kind of give you the opportunity there. So anything that I haven't really mentioned.
Yeah, so just basically, like if you're looking to come up and have visually pleasurable scenery, right? Even the scenery up on the St. Lawrence River with the castles and the islands, and it's beautiful fantastic up there, right?
Yeah.
And I'd like to say that I have a pretty dynamic personality, right? And most of the people around me say I'm positive most of the time. Never really had anybody say that I'm negative. And it'll be a great time. It's a good time. It's a good trip. There's other things to do. If a husband and wife flew out and the wife doesn't like to fish, they have boat trips along the river.
Oh, that's a great
to look
idea.
at the castles
Send
and
her
stuff.
To the castles for the day while you go out and catch 25 pounds of largemouth.
Yeah, and everybody's happy.
Back at the end, and
she can go to Clayton at
day.
the end, downtown Clayton, and they got the little shops with the trinkets and the shirts and stuff. It's a destination spot not only for fishing but just for traveling, and I recommend it to anybody.
Okay, how do you book? And how fast are these things filling up? Because right now it is January 10th, and most people aren't thinking about what they're doing in May, June, July.
I have dates available. I'm pretty workable right now, but they will start really filling up at the end of this month. The boat shows start, right? The outdoor shows start. I'm going to be at the New England Fishing Expo. That's going to be at the end of January, and then at the end of February, I'm going to be at the Rockland Outdoor Show, which is still going on, and I posted the new link to that on my Facebook page. And once those start happening and people start seeing and talking and getting the drones right, that's when the dates really start filling up. You can hit me up on my Facebook, JP's Guide Service, Big JP Guide Service.
Okay.
Or the Instagram, JP Bass Assassin.
Ooh.
At JP Bass Assassin. Yep.
There you go. Or go to the website, Big JP Bass, and then click on the
contact me. I also, can I talk about the raffle?
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm also right now doing a raffle because I wanted to just, it's a destination spot, right?
Yep.
$700 is, good money to go up and go fishing. And, you know, a lot of people, maybe that's out of the reach, right? But for $10, I'm selling raffle tickets and I'm going to raffle off trips, right? And I'm going to draw on March 3rd at that Rockland show down in Suffern, New York. And you can do that through my Facebook and my Instagram. And I got my Venmo and my PayPal on there.
So for $10, you could win a full trip.
Yep, full trip. Lodging's not included. All the information's on my page, right? And there's no limit to the amount of tickets you buy. So if you got a buddy that wants to go, right? You guys are like, we'll throw $50 at her, ever $25 a piece. And then I pull your name out, right? You just got a $700 trip for $50.
Sweet. So that would be on your Facebook page or at one of those deals. All right. Did you talk about what you're fishing out of? I got the Ranger hat.
Oh yeah, right. So
we were talking about that in the car on the way to dinner. You've got a battle tank.
Yeah, right. So I work with Richie Thayer down at Thayer's Marine in Norwich, Connecticut, and he's got me in a 521R 55th anniversary. It's actually the custom colored 55th anniversary. It's got all the bells and whistles on it, right? And I got all the electronics. I got Lowrance, Garmin, and Humminbird on the front. Mm-hmm. 2 Lowrances on the back. This year I actually put a crappy cornfield mount on the front, so when it is really rough and you're out on the lake, you can still see the target, because when the trolling motor is spinning around, it's kind of hard without it. So I run both forward-facing sonars, the LVS 34 and the active target from Lowrance. That way, if somebody's like, hey, I got an active target, I can't really get it dialed in, I want to do a trip, can you teach me? Mm-hmm. I also do electronics also.
Okay. And then if you want to do the St. Lawrence River, let's say you had a group of 4 or something like that you wanted to, the earlier the better, because what you most likely do, you and Travis kind of team up.
Yeah, absolutely. If you called
one group out in one boat, one group out in the other boat, you guys kind of work together, stay in the same area, and you'd all kind of have a day in separate boats. But
yeah, the guys did that last year too. The 4 of them come up, right? Usually it's like a father-son and a father-son, and the 2 kids went with Travis one day, and I had the 2 fathers, and then the next day we switched it, right?
Yeah.
So they got to fish with both of us. So that's great. So yeah, if you got 4 people and you wanted to come up and make a trip, you just call me. We'll talk about a couple of dates. I'll make a phone call, make sure that he's got the same dates available, and then we'll get it all set up.
I mean, to me, it seems like you genuinely enjoy guiding. I've only seen you on the St. Lawrence, but as a whole, like, you're always very passionate when you talk about it. I stayed at Travis's house during the open while you guys were guiding, which was weird because we never talked about fishing because I was so petrified of the off limits rules. So like, as soon as it was off limits, I was like, we can talk politics, we can talk whatever. but the effort that you guys put in, as far as, you know, it's 11 o'clock at night and I'm getting ready for the open and you guys are up tying FG knots and looking at maps on the graphs and figuring out, hey, you know, Travis, and you're going, well, I think this and this, and this is where we're going, and this is who I've got the next day. You're calling the client, kind of figuring out what their expectations are, what they want to do. To me, having been in this industry for a long time, those are all good signs of a guide that cares, that is passionate about it, that isn't burned out, and wants to put his guy on quality fish and have everybody in the boat have a good time.
Man, I really appreciate that. You know, it is like a second full-time job, but I genuinely really love doing it. I tournament fished for a long time. I fished the opens for, you know, I think 3 full seasons in a row, and then I cherry picked a couple, and then I went back and I fished another season with Travis. And I still like fishing tournaments, right? Mm-hmm. But once, you know, I got married and we had my son, and I don't want to be traveling all across the northern part of the country anymore. And I was like, man, I still want to be able to go out and enjoy fishing and make it fun, right? And I was like, I'm going to just do this guiding thing and see what happens. And I absolutely love it. There's nothing better than at the end of the day, the guy telling you that was the best day of fishing I ever had in my life.
And that probably happens more often than not, doesn't it?
A lot.
I mean, think about all the guides as we wrap up our second day 5 here with JP. But think about all the guides who like grind out trips and they're just not around it. You get to guide on the best smallmouth fishery, arguably, in the world.
Yeah. It's like
every day.
I think my family, right? I got a lot of support. My wife lets me go on these trips and chase my passion and do the guiding, and my parents, they help out so much. You know, I'm so thankful to have the network at home, and I just thank every day that I'm able to go up there and enjoy it.
That's awesome. BigJPBass.com. Check it out, JP. Thanks for jumping on the second day 5 guide. Listen, guys, I've gotten a lot of emails, a lot of DMs of people saying, hey, I know I went on this trip. I'm a guide. I do this, and I'm putting all those into a folder. Like I said, we're only going to do 30 of these shows, so we're not going to be able to get to everybody this year. But keep those coming. I'm shooting for 2 to 3 of these a month, 30 a year for the day 5. But like I said, if you have been on a guide trip, if you're a guide and think this might be up your alley, to get on here to kind of let people know who you are, what you do. You have good stories. You have a big personality like JP over here. Like I said, when I found it, I said, yeah, you're worth driving up to Tulsa and picking your ass up and bringing you back because you got some good stories and a good personality.
Really appreciate it.
But yeah, hit
man.
me up at Matt Pangrak on Instagram or Matt at basszone.com and we'll get to it. I actually, I haven't even talked to him, but I got Matt Florentino who works for AFCO. There's a sponsor of the regular show. So his dad, so they're in California, and his dad is like a legendary calico bass guide, which is like ocean bass, right? Which I've never fished for before, but want to. I gotta have him on.
Oh yeah,
because they like, from what I understand, they eat spinner baits, they eat crankbaits, they eat swim baits, glide baits, and then you can punch them just like you do with bass, except through like kelp.
and they probably fight twice as hard as
well, yeah, and then you can like hold them like regular bass. So you might have to go with Captain Florentino for an upcoming show. But stay tuned. The website is updated, fine-tuned. Everything's on that. So go to basszone.com for more information on who's going to be on the next day 5. This Monday, the next regularly scheduled BTL, the owner of Bastrix. You ever throw back? You threw Bastrix.
Yeah.
Remember Bastrix back in the day?
Yep.
And they've made a massive resurgence under new ownership, new product. So the owner of Bastrix is going to be on Monday to talk about that kind of legendary West Coast plastic.
Nice.
Dude, I got to get you back to Tulsa. Like I said, we're filming this on a Wednesday night, and you're working, so you got an early morning. I've got day 4 tomorrow with Frank Scalish, but this will then air on Friday.
Awesome.
So
thanks
again,
dude.
For the I appreciate it. I enjoyed the
really
heck out of it.
appreciate
I always learn. I think you know everything, and then you do a show and you learn so much more. So, all right, this has been another edition of Day 5 Guide Day with BTL. We'll talk to everybody on Monday.